And I've tried to kind of give a summary of what I think are the kind of key dimensions of what might constitute creative learning. And first of all, I've talked about ways of extending. So creative learning might refer to ways in which what's on offer in the school and can be extended. So that the idea is in some ways that you have a kind of quite a obvious curriculum offer in basic subjects, basic skills in that kind of way. But creative learning will offer ways of kind of extending and developing people's understanding and their interest. A second kind of key dimension of creativity and creative learning is around ways of connecting. A lot of attention in debates around the curriculum and school experience talks about the ways in which kids don't take experiences from one subject to the next. They don't take experiences across different kind of academic disciplines. And creative learning is perceived as a kind of way of helping young people make those kinds of connections between experiences and across kind of subjects. The third dimension is something that I've already mentioned before, and I think will be obviously recognisable to you. And the creative learning offers ways of engaging young people who are disaffected and alienated from the curriculum and from school experience. So typically, experiences which are located and derived from the kind of culture of young people, from music, from arts, from out-of-school kind of experiences, offer ways of capturing interest and motivation. And two of the big words that are often used around creative learning, which I haven't put up here because I'm sceptical of them in some ways, are interest and motivation. People talk about interest-driven learning and motivating. And people only really talk about interest and motivation when they're talking about the opposite. I mean, they're not necessarily interested in interest-driven learning. They're more interested in when young people aren't learning, when they're demotivated and when they're alienated in that sense. And creative opportunities, which often mean going outside of school, doing work in the community, doing work at different times, doing different kind of experiences, are often perceived as very key ways of engaging the disaffected and those for whom schooling appears to be failing and for whom schooling appears to be a difficult experience. The fourth kind of dimension is around the learners themselves. In England particularly, having introduced the national curriculum in 1988 and paid a great deal of attention to the production of kind of basic skills, to the use of very kind of traditional forms of curriculum knowledge, history, geography, all those sorts of things, they suddenly got terribly worried that learners themselves were losing a capacity for independent thought. And these three words particularly are kind of really crucial in kind of the quality of education. Do young people know how to take risks? Actually, I should have put a fourth one up there, which is resilience. So are you robust and resilient enough when things are difficult? Can you take risks? Not in a stupid kind of way, obviously, but in a good kind of way. How do you enable people to be able to make judgments about how to take risks if they're used to kind of sitting in rows and merely progressing up a ladder of achievement? How do you stimulate curiosity and imagination? The national curriculum and the apparatus in England that I'm used to very much measures formal outcomes, very much kind of measures attainment against set testing. If you do that, what people started realizing is that young people stopped being interested or curious about the subjects that was on offer and simply became focused on achieving the progression that they were expected to achieve. How can creative learning in some ways develop wider forms and habits of curiosity and imagination, which are described as the kind of key attributes of creative workers in the creative workforce? At the same time, creative learning isn't just about young people and perceptions that young people themselves are kind of getting a bad deal out of schooling, but about teachers. The anxiety around schooling has often had the effect of making teachers overly sensitive to being responsible for the attainment and achievement of cohorts' performance. I'm not saying they shouldn't be, you understand, but I'm just saying, and the consequence of that is that teachers, particularly in the UK, have less and less responsibility for developing curriculum, for devising schemes of work, for allocating attainment and all the rest of it. In some states here, I know teachers still have considerable authority for assessing final, I forgot what it's called, the final certificate of education and things like that. That, to a great extent, has gone in England. And again, creative learning is often encouraging teachers to develop different kinds of projects, different kinds of experiences in order to sort of skill up the teaching workforce, that they too should be seen as creative workers. The penultimate point there describes the way that creative learning is often used as a way of what I call reconfiguring space, place and time, not in some space travel neutrino fantasy, but simply the fact that it's now understood and recognised that, particularly with access to new technologies in the home, it's no good for the school to be the single sole place of learning. That young people will learn out of school. They'll learn in spaces like the one we're in today. They'll learn in museums and galleries and the host of kind of para-educational spaces that exist, particularly in big cities. But they will also learn at home and with their friends, and they, of course, have access to all sorts of out-of-school learning experiences now that are enabled. And in some ways, schooling as simply responsibility for what happens between the hours of X and Y within the curriculum definitions Q and Z is no longer good enough. And finally, creative learning is often seen as a way of kind of helping institutions themselves take on forms of school change. And I'll talk a little bit about some examples of those in a minute.